recognizing that for a highly vulnerable stunt or physically violent scene, we needed someone there to protect safety, that it was the same thing for these highly vulnerable scenes that were exposing actors' bodies and livelihoods, that somebody needed to be there who was an expert to look after that. I'm Michaela Caratini, and I'm the intimacy coordinator on While the Men Are Away, which is a new SBS limited series. In pre-production, I'm doing an assessment of the script, an intimacy assessment or risk assessment. I'm gathering information from the actors around what their boundaries are, from the director around what their vision is, what the important storytelling points are, from the producer around what their concerns are around the project. And then we have lots of risk mitigation documents that we're looking at to make sure everybody's on the same page, make sure that we have a closed set, and that only the people that absolutely need to be there are on that set. I think trust is really key in all of these relationships because, this is a work of art. This is someone's baby or several people's baby. And then you also have the human beings who are telling the story, that this is their body being used, and we have to be very respectful of their consent and of what is going to be the safest way to tell the story for them. And we're really specialists in the area of consent, and we're also specialists in the creative side of telling these kinds of stories in the smoke and mirrors aspects, the modesty garments, the barriers, the masking techniques, and also cultural elements that might be incredibly important tend to be even more important when it comes to intimacy. They tend to differ more greatly between cultures, which is why it's been so incredibly important in our company to have First Nations intimacy coordinators, Arabic intimacy coordinators, and intimacy coordinators that can be across and have lived experience and training in different kinds of ethnicities and peoples and identities. The demand for the role really came from within the industry. We had the Women in Theatre and Screen think tanks in 2015, 2016, 2017. I was on the core committee, and we had hundreds of women in the industry attend and tell us what their issues in the industry were, and they were all surrounding these kinds of scenes. In some cases it was, inability to say no and not risk their job, and in other cases it was just, flat out abuse and exploitation. Our storytellers, the writers and the directors and the actors have the power to move people and change the way that they think in a way that not even our politicians have anymore. Particularly people from marginalized identities are often asked to retell the trauma of their own communities, of their own intergenerational trauma, and an awareness now from what's coming in from psychology and neuroscience that this has a biological effect and an accumulative effect on the human beings telling these stories. It's an occupational hazard of the work, and there's a way to manage and minimize those hazards. So I think the recognition of that has been incredibly important to the work.